I guess it's the top of the hour. It's 1 o'clock where I am, 2 o'clock where you're at.
Yep.
Ready to jump into the office hours?
Our seventh office hour. They're stacking up. We'll hit double digits in no time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Cool. Well, I think we've got a lot of good stuff planned for today. We recently published the final version of the 10 mistakes to avoid as a DealHub admin. And so we're going to go back through it now that it's polished and kind of talk through each item. But I guess I'm on deck for the opening today, right?
That's right. Yeah, you had a good event, and I'm interested to learn more about it too. So,
Okay, cool. All right. Well, let me share my screen over here. So share. All right. So I went to an event this weekend in Houston, and my friend is the GM for a new concept in Houston. And it's the Velocity Sim Racing Lounge, which is like it's right up the alley of our family because my son is super into sim racing. My wife's big into F1. And what's different about this is like you go in there and there's professional racing sim rigs that you use, but also they've got food and drinks. It's like a cool place to hang out. So this was like the friends and family event that we went to.
okay.
And so I just have some pictures from it. But the guy who opened it actually is he was a professional MotoGP racer. So he's
Okay.
like he's like super into racing. So it's pretty cool to meet. So I've got a couple pictures. Got a picture of me, my son. We'll talk about how I did versus my son, but you can kind of see like we're in these rigs, right? Like and I've got a video of it moving. Like the seat actually moves.
Oh wow.
Um, the steering wheel has all the controls to do all kinds of things that I don't know what to do.
That
And
was
then
gonna be
in
one
the
of my questions. Seeing that, like, can you actually use that to manipulate the car? And then is
yes,
there like a beginner setting, so you don't have to do all
uh,
this?
I there's probably a lot that I didn't like figure out. I'm
Yeah.
gonna go back pretty soon. And
Yeah.
these were like the regular rigs, and then you see in the background these are the pro rigs. Like it's three huge widescreen
Oh wow.
monitors, so it's like total. I've never done one like this. I didn't think it would be as immersive as it is, but it really, when you're sitting in there, it is immersive. And I've got a this is my friend. I just took a video of him doing it, and you can kind of see the car, the
Yes.
seat moving, and I mean, it really adds to the experience. And like you're fighting the steering wheel, and it's very challenging.
Oh wow.
So
And
challenging. Yeah, well, go ahead.
I bet I'm assuming the brakes and everything are also resistive, so you really have to push
Very
them in
hard.
order to stop and everything,
Yes.
right? Wow.
Yes. And it's very responsive. Like you're pushing on the brake, you can hear the tires. Like if you lock it up, you can hear them squealing. And
Okay.
so the way they had it set up is I think they've got like 20 rigs or something, and like you have 15 minutes and you had to complete a clean lap. You can see here it says complete a clean lap. That means that Matt, this is my friend grown up, he had not completed a clean lap.
Okay.
Nor did I. I never completed a single clean lap. And then at the end of the night, there were about 100 people. At the end of the night, I was nowhere on the leaderboard, but my son was up there. Ah.
Oh man.
Yeah, and like this guy Eric, he teaches driving, race
Okay.
car driving. So like there were some, I mean, but you could see he was way ahead of everybody else. So
Sure.
it was super fun. I really enjoyed the experience. I'm gonna go back. It's a cool concept too because if you're into racing, you get to do it. But while you're not racing, you could just hang out, have some dinner, have a
Yeah.
drink. So you could kind of bring family and stuff like that.
Oh,
So
that's awesome. Kind of the top golf model, but with racing.
yes, that's
Uh,
right.
Did you so what style cars was everyone racing? I saw a Porsche and everything. Could you do F1 cars and everything too?
The way they had it set up, it was all like we're doing these GT3 cars, yeah, like a Porsche and Ferrari and stuff. But
Yep.
somehow my son at the end of the night got on an F1 car.
Oh, cool.
I have no idea what he did. The other thing about it is like here I'll share again. The I walking into this, I didn't think about it, but there's this huge technology aspect that they have to maintain. Like, so not only are you running a restaurant, you're running a bar, um, all the facilities with it, but then you have technology, right? And like, I mean, technology, we know technology has glitches, right?
Hmm.
And so you've got to have people that are proficient to go in and troubleshoot. Like, I don't know, because these are all running on PCs. You can see the PC in the background, right? And
Right.
like, what if the software quits or stuff like that? So
Sure.
it's takes it takes a lot to keep the thing going, but it
Right.
was really
Never
cool.
mind the point of sale systems and whatever other technologies they want running. So yeah, there's
Yeah.
a lot to it. That's
So
cool.
I mean it was like a 3 hour friends and family event, and I think they probably had like 200 people show up, and it was I've never been to a soft opening like that, but I think it went like pretty seamlessly. I was worried about my buddy, like that's a lot of stress, but seemed like all the food came out, everybody had drinks, everybody was happy, all the sim stuff worked, and they
Yeah.
pretty much had to kick people out at like 10 o'clock. Everybody's supposed to leave at 9, but like I don't think people want to leave.
Well, that's a good sign.
That's a good sign, right? Yeah, yeah. So it was super cool.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, when I come visit, we'll have to go
Yeah,
explore for a night. That'll be good.
definitely, definitely. All right. Well, back to the more exciting stuff, the Deal Hub, right?
Yes.
Um, so I think that I was going to use the new article to kind of have us like guide us through the conversation. So maybe I pull that up. Just housekeeping items. Um, if you're watching on LinkedIn, the Zoom link is down in the comments below. Grab it and come join us here if you want to ask questions or participate in the dialogue. If you're watching this after the fact, you're always welcome to come join us on Thursdays. We've been pretty consistently doing it at least every other week, and we're also always open for more topics, right? Because the point here is we want to help the wider Deal Hub admin community get better at what we do, right? Because
That's right.
it's not an easy job. All right, so I'm gonna share. Can you see the my browser and everything?
Yes, we're on the homepage. Yep.
All right, we're on the homepage. Scott launched a new homepage, so I thought I'd start us there.
Looks good.
And we've got a bunch of resources for anybody that wants to look at them. We've got pro tips videos that we've done in the past. We're still producing those. And then an article like this actually came out on the blog. And if you want to keep updated when we have new articles come out, you can subscribe to the blog and you'll see here. So the 10 DealHub mistakes we made, how to avoid them. And I've gone ahead and already open it up, and it's broken into, well, I've had this web page open a little while. It's broken out into three categories, right? Don't miss the easy wins, avoid unnecessary complexity, and don't neglect administrative fundamentals. So I think we'll walk through each one of those categories one at a time.
Yes.
Um, the other thing I want to mention is Scott's been doing a good job of coming out with like shorter versions of these pieces, right? And like I could imagine I wouldn't, if I had a cubicle, I would put this up here and I was starting out, right? Like, okay, what do I need to do? Oh yeah, version frequently and incrementally. Need to do that, right? Like, because I feel like if you hit all 10 of these items early on, you'll avoid a lot of future pain,
A
right?
lot of pain. Yeah, it's almost like the vision board, right? Every day you can
Yes.
refocus and remind yourself, oh, let's make sure not to hit these pitfalls.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. So, these are written in the context of like mistakes. So when it says starting with the playbook, it does not mean to start with the playbook, which is interesting because that's actually it's like the most exciting part of working on Deal Hub because you're you learn how to program and you learn how to make things show up and hide and it's fun, right? And you're basically creating an experience for your salespeople. The the risk in that is you're kind of building for fun and building blind, right? I was just building a proof of concept for one of our potential customers to do a demo, and I went back to this thinking of okay, start with the output document. So I actually didn't touch the playbook. I
Yeah.
opened up the output PDF and I
Hmm.
opened up theirs and I built their PDF. So I built the header that has all the customer information. I built the
Sure.
pricing table, and like there's always this what is it like impulse to say, oh, I need to know the customer's address and get excited and jump over to the playbook and do it, but I didn't, right? I just,
Yes.
as I went along, I made notes. And by doing that, you have your output, right? And then you're not building blindly where you could create 50 different pieces of data and only 10 are needed. And maybe you miss some. And then you're going back and forth. I mean, oh, Brenton, have you ever experienced that where you're like bouncing between the output
Oh yeah.
PDF,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it's reverse engineering really, right?
Mm-hmm.
Figure out all the final data points that you need and then uh only then really focus on the playbook. I will say this week I'm slightly guilty of the of maybe not following our own advice, but I'll defend it by saying this group is currently using spreadsheets to do a lot of dynamic calculations in order to arrive at the
Mm-hmm.
final price. Um, and their quoting process today is take a snapshot of a full Excel document, put it into a doc, and that's the proposal, right?
Right.
Um, so I am slightly skipping this step only to help facilitate the calculations, uh, but they will help us arrive at the core line items that do need to be presented in
Yes.
the final document. So it's more so to quickly arrive at the data that will be used, not
Right.
so much committing to, that is going to be what defines everything. And we're treating it as a prototype, right? Let's change where you're doing this calculation today, a spreadsheet. Let's at least just allow all those values to be available in the system, and then we're going to slow down drastically once we have an operating prototype, and we are going to go to the output doc and do everything here. Um,
Right.
Make sure we have the data in the format we need, what other questions are needed in order to get to that point. Um, so,
Well, and
go ahead.
I think that's you know, it's completely valid, right? It probably expands on this topic. It's like we call out the output documents because they're the most obvious outcome of what you do in Deal Hub, but there's also that data layer, whether it's your past information you need to pass to Salesforce to action
Hmm.
on against the orders, right? That's also
Hmm.
an output, right? Where you're talking about like the values for a calculation, that's an output, right? So in
Yes.
this article, we're kind of calling out the most simplistic version of that. It is the document because that's usually the most tangible. But yeah, depending on how your business is built, there's probably other outputs. And I can imagine that, like, if we started a fresh build, you know, that's the first thing to ask is, okay, where are all the outputs? Which is what I like the way you're putting it, reverse engineering. Like it's contrary to what you would expect. Like you want to start with you're trying to replace the sales process, right? Right. So
Hmm.
why wouldn't you start with what a seller thinks about? That's it's it's a risky path, right? Because it can weave you all over the place, and People do it 10 different ways, but that output, there's probably one, two, three ways. It's very defined. Yeah.
Right. And the output becomes the source of truth for that customer. So
Yes.
it is the most important thing. And whether it's the actual sales order produced or the line item produced, as we're now, expanding or elaborating upon, um, that is rushing to the end, a racing to the output. So
Right. Right. And that I'm glad you said that, race to the document, because this is kind of a mantra that Scott has talked about from our early days.
mhm,
And I just used it when I was building this demo, right? And it helps you get to the meat of what's important fast, right? And we'll talk a little bit about that later on, about what we think is the right thing to go live. And I say go live and I put it in quotes because go live is not necessarily defined the same way for everybody, right?
right. Right. For some, it could mean purely brand new business goes through DealHub. Others, it might mean not only do we have to be able to do new business, but we need to do change orders or renewals immediately because of the volume that's about to come through. So, um, and then you could even go a step further. Is it every product line? Is it a subset of product
Right.
lines that we can go live with? Racing to get some small wins and
Yes.
build momentum. That's
Right.
really what's behind this mantra of race to the document, race to getting a win, race to showing value that, hey, we can simplify things. Here's proof. Here's one little piece. But just imagine, give us a little more time, and it's a snowball effect. So many other things simplify because it can run through the system and use the guardrails.
Right. Right. Awesome. Well, I think we'll probably have to watch the clock if we're going to try to go through all 10 of these, right?
That's
So, are
right.
you comfortable moving on to the product counters?
I am. Yes, absolutely.
All
So
right.
with product counters, what we were talking about in our last session and in the article is um, the benefit of using counters in every build because then you can drive parameters on the items being quoted to facilitate things like approval workflows. And the benefit of using a counter is instead of a playbook question, uh, example we highlighted before, with a playbook question, when you're running renewals, you're probably running a whole different set of questions and hopefully not even asking the rep many questions at all. You're taking line items or subscriptions for what the customer already owns, in importing them or letting them land in DealHub, and then that is generating the renewal document, just incrementing up on um, annual increases or dates. And so that one question you used before to drive an approval probably isn't even part of the playbook at that point in time in the renewal. Whereas a counter driven system, saying that a certain product line is presented in this proposal, a counter can always stay with that logic and can always be present, and therefore you can ensure consistency. Um, so yeah, there's major benefits to this, and I think the to elaborate on it slightly, another thing that counters enable you to do is combined scenarios, right?
True.
So, yes, you could just be looking to see if a product line exists or not, but you could also start looking at combination of product lines, right? Do they have three line items from one product line and two line items for another? Is that okay? Do you need to stop that proposal in its tracks? Or is that something that should be rewarded, if you will, and additional discounts should be provided, things like that, right? Um, and that all can be accomplished with the counter-based system.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think when we originally talked about this concept, we felt like it's hard to convey in this format. I think you
Hmm.
did a really good job of kind of like articulating the why. Uh, the how is we have an entire video. I think we did in office hours, right? So
We did.
anybody, maybe we'll drop the link back to that. So if anybody wants to pursue this, this is like foundational, that if you don't learn this out of the gate, then you're going to make a bunch of mistakes that you have to clean up later, right? So it's I say it's foundational, like it should be in every build. There's no reason it shouldn't be, because it like future proofs things, definitely.
Completely. Yes.
I love the name of this is like random tags, because it tags, if you're not careful, do develop randomly, right? So
Yes.
the way to avoid that is to understand what tags do, right? Usually what happens when you're first starting out is you build some products, and then you're trying to get them in a table, and you say, well, how do I get the one times to show up in this table, and then the recurring to show up in this table, and then, oh well, I can use tags to say that. So then you all of a sudden you end up with a one time tag, and you end up with a recurring tag.
Mhm.
Totally makes complete sense, but like you got there by happenstance, right? So in reality, like the primary uses of tags are, you know, organization in the document, making things appear, driving discounting behavior, right?
Yes.
And also, you know, you talked about counters, you can use them in combination with counters, right? So like if you take those three things and then you sit down before you load your product catalog, because cleaning up tags is kind of a pain, right? I mean, like you have a column in the spreadsheet for primary tag, but then you have a column with all the other tags, and they're just like comma delimited. So
Right.
you want to remove a tag, you want to add a tag. Oh my God. Like it's a mess, right? And don't get me started on like you got to be very careful about like, I don't know if the system still lets you put a dash in the tags, but like I avoid
Yep.
dashes anywhere, because the system can receive it as something else, or upper and lowercase. We recently found out like there's some
Yep.
odd behavior around that. So starting out and
Spaces.
saying, yeah, spaces. And so starting out and saying, okay, well, what are my pricing tables? Okay, I have one time, I have recurring. I don't know, maybe you have a separate one for professional services. Okay, that sounds like three tags, right? And then, you know, what are my product lines? You know, like, do I have discount avenues? Like I've got, you know, product group A approves something, product group B approves something. Okay, that sounds like
Mhm.
another category of tags. So just taking the time to plan it out and put them all someplace else so that you can manipulate them before you put them in the system is a really good idea.
Yes. Yep. Well said. We can move on to the next section, and so the second group of topics that we were highlighting was all about trying to avoid unnecessary complexities. Um,
Yes.
so keep it simple, keep it scalable. You know, I like thinking of the KISS metric. Keep it
Yeah.
really simple. Um, and so with that, one of the items that we tried highlighting is avoiding the use of multiples, whether that's playbooks, documents, deal rooms. Uh, there are ways and strategies that you can ensure even variations are presented in a from a single document with the way that presentation rules work, leveraging how playbook questions have been answered. Um, and when you don't have to jump between screens to copy paragraphs or do a stare and compare to make sure that that legal clause that was recently updated this quarter is truly the same in multiple spots, um, and you only have to look at one location. There's a huge benefit and time savings as far as the maintenance of the system goes by driving a single experience.
Yes. And I do know this is a bit controversial, because we've had many debates with uh, people, many people I highly respect that have a different opinion. Um, Mark. I see you out there. Uh, and I do think there are situations where multiple playbooks or multiple documents make sense, right?
Yep. Yes.
The point here is that, early on, don't be quick to do it, right? So, like everywhere in DealHub, there's branching mechanisms, right? Like whether it's you can create multiple playbooks, you can create separate question groups, you can create separate questions, separate documents. Like there's all these forks in the road that you just have to know that every time you take that fork in the road, if you're going to have the same thing happen on both sides, you're gonna have to do it twice, right? And so like take that fork in the road, new business renewal. Okay. And then well, we have a quote for product line A and product line B. Well, I have to have a product line A, product line B over here documents. I have to have product line A and product line B. Now I've got four of them, right? And that's a very
Yes.
like that it's very easy to get into that situation with a very simple business, what I just described, right? And we've managed incredibly complex businesses with a single playbook
Hmm.
and even a single document, a single deal room, and it just makes maintenance easier, right?
Absolutely. In our closing today, I will bring up I've learned of a use case for a separate uh, playbook, but let's get through the article first, and I'll talk
Oh,
about that later.
okay. I think I know what that's about. That's a good teaser. All
All
right.
right.
Mistake number 5, over automating. And this is such an easy trap. It's, so often when people purchase a CPQ, they there's so many things that the CPQ can deliver for the business, right? Faster sales, more accurate quotes,
Hmm.
like boom, 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 more audibility about approvals and discounts and everything. And so it's so easy to say, oh, I bought CPQ for all of that. I want all of that, back to our go live statement, right? But um, it can, your job as a deal hub administrator is to kind of provide a buffer between what the tool's capable of and what the business wants, right? Like I always like to say in everything, it's like I think we were talking about this yesterday, Brenton. Like anything's possible with like time, money, or skills, right?
Yep.
And
The trifecta.
right, and if you don't have the skills or the time, you're gonna pay money to do it. Like
Yes.
so there's always trade-offs. So if the business comes to you and says, I want all of this, I want the tool to do all these things for me, the answer is always like, yeah, it can, but it's going to take this long, and then you'll never go live. So I always like to bring it back to, okay, the business wants this, we're right here. So where's the happy medium where we start? If you're
Mhm.
working in a spreadsheet, approvals are happening by word of mouth or something, like how do we incrementally put some automation around there so that you can go live, you can start to use the system. Back to your point, you get some of that buy-in, you get that snowball effect, and also you find out a lot more of what you actually want once people are in the system using it. So, well, day one, you may say you want all of this and all of this automation. It's possible that you still want a lot of automation, but maybe the target's moved, or maybe you've decided, you know what, this much automation is enough. So,
Hmm.
I mean, like this says it very well. Start simple and keep it as simple as you can. Um, and I've been victim of doing this to myself, where somebody asks for something cool, and I say, yeah, I can do
Of
that,
course.
and it's like you want to show off, and then you build it, and then like 6 months later, somebody needs a change to it. Like, oh man, this thing is such a pain.
Yes. Yes. Well, and I'll just do a callback to I think it was our last open office hours where we reviewed the concept of admin questions, meaning that it's another layer in the playbook that only users that have a certain level of access can toggle on and off. And if you take that approach for something that may need automation in the future, you could preview, hey, what would have happened in this proposal if the automation was on, allowing for you to test it and create some proofs before imposing it in the system. So avoiding over automating, absolutely, but where you know automations are going to have to take place, making sure you build in some mechanisms so that you can have a safety switch, right? Both in testing it or maybe even just deactivating it so that that proposal can get out to the prospect.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point. Um, so I think just to wrap on this one, it's like if you over automate, it's a good word, fragile, right? Mm,
Yes,
and I
yes.
change this, the whole thing breaks because it's complex, or it becomes rigid. And I guess we didn't talk about this, but inevitably we've learned after so many implementations that whenever a customer or somebody says it's always going to be like this, we say, is it really?
Hmm.
Because always
Hmm.
like we only allow 20% discount. Period. That's max. And then 2 days later, well, we have this deal and it needs 25%, right? So you want to put like soft limits or approvals instead of making it so rigid that you have to go in and like do a new activation on a new version. Yeah.
Right, right. Yes, perfect. I like this one a lot. We were talking about making a distracting deal room, right? So the deal room is a great vehicle for delivering information. But when it comes to the proposals, you're trying to race to the signature now.
Yeah.
So by not overcrowding the deal room or providing too much, forces the focus down to what really matters, right? Um, and so we strongly recommend and work hard to implement simple deal rooms. They'll have a welcome message, pricing if necessary. And if there is pricing, we try to limit how much information about pricing is shown. Maybe it's just summary,
Mhm.
subtotals, um, and then driving to the signature block. If they need more details about what's being quoted, that's where the full order form and proposal can come into play. Um, the moment that you start adding more and more things to the deal room, it could slow things down, both in distractions, because the deal room could be used for as that vehicle for marketing materials. Um, but also if you're putting required questions into the deal room, now maybe somebody who would have signed the dotted line right away, they're delayed because now they have to go hunt down details in order to confirm or make what's the word I'm looking for? Certain like make certifications and
Right.
confirmations of what they'll be doing. Um, there's trade-offs like everything else. Adding
It's
more
trade-offs.
could slow it down.
Yes, yes. I like the idea of I always think back to like my marketing days with the required fields. There's always this tension between, the information the business wants from somebody, for example, signing up for our blog, right? I saw
Hmm.
this, right? I
Yep.
mean, I think this is probably the right amount of information. I need your email to send it to you, and I'd love to say hi first name, right? Like it seems
Know
like
who
the
we're
bare
talking to.
minimum, but there's always this tension, the business wants to know, well, what company was your company size? How many salespeople do you have? Oh, and then
Yes.
all of a sudden nobody signs up, right? So same thing with the deal room. It can People can get stuck if you're too again, you're trying to race to the signature. I like the way that you put that. And if you do more often what we see, if there's a push for more content in the deal room, it's due to a lot of excitement around the format of the deal room, right? And but what happens is now you have to bring in other groups to contribute information. So now you need your marketing team, and then there's videos, and then lo and behold, like those are going to change over time. And like, so you're increasing the maintenance that you need to do on it. And if a lot of that information already exists on your website, right? Usually, if a salesperson is heavily involved in the sale, they're going to provide a lot of that content
Yes.
that's already there in another format, right? So,
Yep.
and in fact,
Emails,
yeah,
conversations. Yeah.
exactly, because it's pointed, right? And so what you'll see too is, even if there's a big push from the rest of the organization to put this kind of information into the deal room, the first ask you'll get is for salespeople. They want to be able to turn it on and off,
Hmm.
because different parts of the buying journey, they're I've already shown them all the videos. They already know who we are. I'm just delivering the signature document. I do not want to distract them, right? So
That's right.
you'll end up putting triggers in place for that.
That's right. Being cognizant of time, we probably should jump to the next big section. But just before we do, I recently saw a meme that really drives this home. Think about some of the most popular tools today. Let's think of Google. Let's think of ChatGPT.
Yes,
What's on the page when you interact with it the first time?
absolutely nothing.
One entry field and one
Yeah.
button. Now think
Yes.
about your application, or in this case, a deal room. You want a green button that says sign here. But if you
Right.
start providing all sorts of other items, it's just a distraction, uh, and could waylay getting to the final goal of a closed deal. I
That's
need to
so
find
interesting.
that meme because it resonates in many different ways.
I don't know if this is still true, but I'm like remembering back to like 15 years ago. Like, you go to the Yahoo search page and it would just be like criticals and blah blah. Like,
Yeah.
yes. And then, we're all the same. We're like, oh, that looks really interesting. What happened in this part of the world? And then 20 minutes later, you haven't done your search, and
That's
they
right.
haven't gotten the revenue. Cool. I agree with you. We need to move on. Special answer types. I think this just takes a second. Like, uh, some of these widgets look really cool, like numeric ranges, and numeric lists. But just be careful, right?
Mm,
Seems like typically we'll use a lot of text lists. We use a lot of numeric answers and radio buttons. We like radio buttons too, because it's very defined. But like, those are the top three I would say that we use.
I agree. Yep.
Yeah.
Simple, consistent.
All
Great.
right.
So yeah, the next group of things to avoid as common mistakes we categorize as, don't neglect your administrative fundamentals, whether it's version control or documentation. All of this is going to say, keeping it in the forefront, doing the simple things every time. They'll save a lot of heartburn and headache as you go on, and it will make it easier to transfer knowledge between other individuals as you do, build out your organization, because hopefully deals are closing, and so therefore more count comes along, and you have more space to share the workload. And if you do some of these simple things, well, it's going to make it that much easier to share the load with others. So the first item that we highlighted was infrequent versioning as a mistake to avoid. In DealHub, it's an iterative system where you can rapidly create new versions of the playbook, and that includes pricing and document the output documents and everything. And what we're trying to highlight here is that the sooner you version up or create versions in between item elements that you're adding, the easier it is to see what part actually isn't working as expected or pull out little pieces. If you go for the monolith version that has whole new product lines, features, functions, and then only after releasing it find out, oh, nope, there's one change that's going to impact everything. It just becomes a bit much to dissect and pull apart.
Right. It's hard to detangle. I always like to simplify this and saying there's no undo button in Deal Hub, right? And
No.
like, so I don't know what's a good example of that. If you delete a question, uh, and you didn't have a record of it on a prior version, you don't really know. It's not easy to figure out what that question was that you deleted. It's also not easy to tell like all the tangling pieces of that it was touching that got updated, and it'll
Hmm.
go through and erase rules and all sorts of stuff. So no undo button. Your undo button is saying, "Oh, this new version I made, I messed something up. I'm just going to go back to the last version. I'm going to copy it again. I'm going to start over." Right? It makes it makes me more bold. I like these,
Yes.
this mini experiments, right? I mean, because sometimes you you don't know if something will work, or if you know it'll work, you still don't know if it's what the business needs. So you need to,
Hmm.
like you said, you need to be able to preview it to them. So do a little mini experiment. They like it, they don't like it, they don't like it, no problem. And just throw away that
Pull it out.
version. Right.
That's
Right.
right.
Yep.
And it's just deleting a version then. It's not having to go through many different areas and start deleting content, which is
Right.
yeah, a time saver too. And along the same note, same lines, if you're not versioning each, I'm sorry, adding comments to each version you're creating, then you're going spelunking every time. You got to figure out, well, what was in that version? When did I add this thing? Um, of but by adding some very simple comments right on the description of each version, then just with a glance you can understand, oh yeah, that's right, it was in Q1 of that year that we introduced something, and you don't have to open up versions or start creating proposals just to confirm that data.
Right. Right. I think like I've seen we've adopted some good practices from just learning from people that we work with. Like oftentimes you'll have 10 iterations of a version as everybody kind of incrementally builds and adds and adds, and just making sure that you always keep the comment on the work in progress as work in progress. That's great, because then
Mhm.
anybody goes into the environment, they know where they need to do their active work, especially as you get other people helping you in the system, or somebody from DealHub helps, or we're helping. Like making sure that all the work happens in one version is so important. Otherwise you end up with two separate versions, and we all know there's no easy way to transfer the information. It's a bring it up and copy and paste, right? So
Yes. Yep. Perfect.
accumulating garbage. I'm like, the more years I'm DealHub adminning, the more I understand the pain of this, right? Like it's those early decisions, especially um, when you're a lone admin at a
Mhm.
company, which I was at Appgate.
Yes.
You're doing 10 other jobs. You're learning how to be a Deal Hub administrator, learning how to be good at it. So you got to learn all 10 of these things, but then at the same time, you have new requirements coming in all the time. And there's just a natural inclination. I don't know if I'm not like I don't have stuff piled up in my house, but like there's always this nice natural inclination, like, well, maybe I'll need that later. I'm gonna save that,
Yep.
right? And
Oh yeah. I'm guilty of that in woodworking, right? I have piles of scraps, but that's what woodworkers do. You think, oh, I'll be able to use that in a future project.
well,
Well,
yeah, that's perfect kind of piece of wood for some future possible project. Yes.
right, right. Um, yeah, no, it's definitely something, and I think we've mentioned this before, but I'll reiterate it here. A practice that I've started taking is when I identify, let's say, a playbook question or product that's being sunset, no longer is needed in the process. Um, just like what we talked about a few mistakes ago, you may not want to delete it right away because you don't know the downstream impact of it. But what you can do is set it to be deactivated and just add a quick note. It was deactivated on this date or
Yes.
safe to delete in 3 months and put the date that
Yes.
it's safe to delete. And just taking that really simple step makes it so that when it is time to do bring cleaning, it's not a complete investigation to find out what's used and what's not, but along the way, you've made notations of here are the pieces that aren't being used. And so then when you do have that, uh, you know, that month with a little free time and you're able to clean house, the decisions are easy. It's all documented right there for you.
Right. Right. And it's one of those things that it's like it doesn't immediately have benefit that you see, but it has long-term benefits. Like I think about, um, systems like Salesforce, for example. We work with a lot of companies that have had Salesforces for 10, 15 years,
Sure. Yep.
and that could be 10, 15 admins ago, right?
Yes.
So, so like a field was created for some business use, right? And or some sort of automation. There's a lot of situations where the person who built it was no longer needed and they didn't clean it up, but the next person doesn't know what it is and it's too risky to clean
Hmm.
it up. So now what happens is you end up with all this tech debt and like just thinking about like walking through a playbook that has a lot of garbage sitting
Hmm.
around that's unused, questions that were made for a purpose that's no longer needed. And so every time you need to go make an update, you have to like it cognitively, you've got to like process all that information and say, oh, I don't need to look at that. I don't need to look at that. That's old. Whereas, it's just like I like to keep my desk clean. I like to keep surfaces clean because I do feel like it reduces your overall like mental stress, like when you're
Absolutely.
doing something. Yeah.
Yep. Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, these are, you know, as you heard throughout our session today, still items that we remind ourselves of every implementation we step in. And hopefully, with these kind of fundamentals top of mind, you avoid some of the pitfalls that we've learned and experienced early on in our administration careers, and um, makes it so that your system runs that much smoother.
Absolutely. So you hinted towards something earlier. Playbook, multiple
Playbooks.
playbook. Yeah.
Yes, I've learned a possible reason why you will want multiple playbooks. Back in December, DealHub announced that there's new API functionality coming. So this is the ability for headless quoting. I've just learned that it is now GA, ready to actually go. So you can expect a office hour and probably a few tooltip sessions coming from us in the near term.
Cool.
But what I learned from that is that if you're going to use the headless API for quotings, you can't use the standard playbook. You actually need a simplified playbook in order to
Mm,
facilitate it. Um, so this is the first use case I've come across that's going to actually drive the need for different playbooks. Um, Fortunately, we have strategies and tooling that make it really easy to actually copy questions between playbooks. So more to come for sure, but we're excited to know that the headless API functionality is ready to go. It's ready for prime time. I had a review of it actually earlier today with one of the product team leads, and it's impressive. It really makes for a seamless
really?
experience where you can fill in a couple of form questions, hit a preview button, and get an estimate for a product. And um,
So I don't mean to put you on the spot, but we
no,
haven't
go for it.
talked since you met with the product team. Like
Yeah.
what comes to mind as the primary use case for the headless
Yeah,
API?
we even talked about this a little bit. So it's going to be items where a customer can self-serve, right?
Okay.
It's a finite set of products, a finite set of options. And so maybe all the customer needs to do is say, well, I need these many widgets, and I want you to look at those widgets this many times a year. Just providing those two calculations could auto-generate a proposal, display on the screen on the web page. Here's what the estimate is. Do you want to move
Yes.
forward? They hit yes, and then they launch right into a fully formatted deal room, and they go through the normal deal room signing experience, and they're off to the races.
Really? Okay.
Um,
So always hear about, everybody's talking about omni-channel, right? I've been
Yeah,
hearing about omni-channel for like years and years and years, but it's all about, a business giving their customers multiple routes to interact with their company or buy, right? Okay.
that's right. And if you don't have to have a sales rep in the middle of it all, it's that much less friction, and
Right.
it's there.
It's
Another use
huge.
case
Yeah.
we talked about was renewals. Maybe your renewal process doesn't really require the customer to provide interaction, but you want to give them the option. Well, with the
Mm,
headless system, you could interact with your Salesforce or CRM
hmm.
system, automate some notifications and running of the workflow to say, all right, let's go pre-populate what that renewal is going to include, provide that detail in a message and say, here's all the things that you're about to renew. Do you want to make any changes? Do you want to increase or decrease? Just that alone could bring them to a page that allows for them to fill out details, and then that will automatically go into the proposal. Or if the customer doesn't respond, maybe your cadence is after you sent them the renewal warning message a month or 2 weeks before the renewal, and
Yeah.
then with no changes, they went ahead and auto renews them. And with the headless system, now what previously you would have had to had a internal rep go through DealHub, create a proposal, maybe use that internally functionality so that all the subscriptions are properly created in the system. Now that can just automatically be done through the API.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
What I keep thinking about is like we've worked in businesses where they have a complex like enterprise sales cycle,
Hmm.
whether it's like a data center business, so that requires a lot of discussion and consultation. But then there's all these incremental ads that happen over the course of the contract that shouldn't be addressed by an enterprise salesperson in an enterprise sales process, like whether it's like adding, a cable connection in the data center, or it's adding two users of licenses or whatever. But
Yep.
because the sales process is usually built around this enterprise model, and all the everything from the quote to cash has to pass through all these systems. They use the same sales model and same
Right.
sales motion for even these simple things. But what you're talking about is like, no, you don't have to change the systems you're using. You're just going to change what you expose on the very front, right? Like you're
Yep.
so, oh, you want to add a cross connect cable in the data center? Sure, here's your subset of products that are available for you to choose from. And
Hmm.
so they could have an interface to go in there, select it, and then they go
Yep.
through the entire same signing process. All the data flows back through Salesforce or HubSpot all the way through the stream. Okay,
Exactly.
that's that's pretty slick, because it feels like usually, I talked about forks in the road earlier. Usually when you want to create a secondary motion like that, companies go out and get like an e-commerce platform, and then it's like, okay, well, how do we mold that data, smash it into our existing sales process? But in this case, you're just going to the very front of it, and so you're
Yep.
put that fork in the road at the front, so it can
Yep.
follow the whole thing. Okay, all
That's
right,
right.
I'm excited about that.
Simplify the front end while having all the high fidelity in the back end still without
Yeah,
recreating it. Um, so yeah, like I said, more to come. We'll have some demos and stuff within the coming weeks, but that's new functionality. That's reach out to your CSM and let them know if you have a use case that you're interested in learning more, and share it with us too. We'd love to
yeah,
help explore those use cases, and maybe they'll be part of some of the examples we build out.
cool.
Oh,
Well, we made it
awesome.
through all 10 things in less than an hour, which is, that must mean that we were more focused after helping. It took a lot of work to get to a 10 things article that was very like concise, because we have so many things that we want to say, right, to avoid,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes. Uh, no, this is great. Glad to share it, and hopefully we hear from you if you have any other mistakes that you run into, and we can share with other administrators how they could avoid them as well.
Yep. Awesome. All right. Well, we'll see everybody later.
Take care now.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.